Hey there, I'm Anna Sanders from Utah Afterschool Network. I am the Professional Learning System Director, and I'm here to show you the after-school incentive. We're going to do a quick run-through of the applications, where to find them, and then followed by this recording will be the recorded live session of the Q&A for the after-school incentive. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen and take you to the utahafterschool.org website. So where you're going to want to go is scroll over to what we do, drop down to professional learning, and then come down to after school professional development incentive. Then you're going to come down here, and the steps are laid out for you really nicely and clearly with step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You're going to want to make sure that all 5 steps are complete. The first step that you're going to want to do is determine if your work in an after-school program is approved and eligible for the DWS incentive. So let's find out by going to Child Care Licensing website. Then we're going to scroll down to Parents and Public. Then we're going to come over to facility records. You're going to find and review a child care facility record. So click on facility record, and then over here you're going to see find a facility. So we're going to check on find a facility. You're going to come up here and you're going to put in a center. We're going to just do the one that was last checked. So we're going to do search, and it comes up. And then you click on it, and then what you're looking for is right at the top up here where it says license type. You want to make sure that you're a registered, you could be a registered teen program, you could be a licensed center, you could be a licensing exempt, and you also need to be in current standing. And once that is secured, you're ready to move to the next step. So I'm going back to the UAN website, and we're going to go to the next step. Step 2, you're going to download and complete each page of the after school development incentive application. This is a really quick application that's 2 pages. We are going to be putting it up as a PDF editable document on the website. Right now it is not, but we'll get that to you hopefully by the end of the day. Today it will be up on the website. So what you're going to come in here and do is make sure that you fill all of this information out. It is very important that your organization name and program name are here. We don't want just after school program. What we're looking for is making sure that your program is eligible as well. So you need to put your complete information here, the complete organization name and the complete program name. If one of these places is left blank, we're going to send it back to you and ask you to do it again. You do not need to worry about this section that says office use only. The next section to be aware of is you need an employment verification, which means you need your supervisor's information. We need your complete supervisor's name, phone number, and email address so we can reach out and verify your employment. It is important that you have at least 10 hours of program time in an after school program, or that you're working and supervising those in a program at least 10 hours a week. And then you sign that all this information is accurate. This form is then going to be emailed to professional learning at utahafterschool.org, which is also explained to you in the Q&A, and it's also here in your step. So step 3, that's what it is. Both pages are completed and you email it, and our email is here. You're going to save the document with a unique file name. Your first name, last name, application, FY23 is how we would prefer it to be saved. The next step that you're going to do is download the after school professional development incentive and complete each tab. So let's do that right now and take a look at it really quick. So we're going to click on it here, and then it's going to download to your computer. And once it's downloaded, you can open it up. It's going to take just a second to do that. And once that is open, you're going to have a couple of tabs that you're going to need to complete. Okay, it's just taking another minute. It'll be right there. For time's sake, I'm going to open it up here on my tab and show you. Okay, so these steps are really clear for you. Step 1 of 2 is completing the incentive application. The deadline for this school year is April 14th, 2023. If you do not get it to us by April 14th, 2023, we will need to move your application to next year, and you'll have to start again. So make sure that you get it to us by this deadline. And then you're going to complete each tab. There is a work experience verification tab, a training verification tab, a professional activities verification, and an applicant summary. Once all the verification tabs are completed, you're going to save the document again in a unique file name. We want it first name, last name, FY23VF. And then you want to email it. You don't print it and you don't mail it to us. Both the application and the incentive should be emailed to us. So let's go down to the next work experience tab. What you're going to want to do is complete all this information here. And we need every line complete. The organization, your program title, your supervisor's name, their phone number, and their email in case we need to reach out for verification. Again, your program site's going to be really important to get the full name here. So we want the ages that you served. So again, just to be aware of eligibility, you must be working or have worked at least 10 hours per week directly with youth ages 5 to 18 in an after-school program, or directly supervising or have supervised those who work with youth in the after-school program. So the ages are important. So if you're only at an elementary site, you're going to want to put kindergarten through maybe 5th grade or 6th grade. If you're working in a center that has all ages, you could put 5 to 18. If you're only working in a teen program, you may only be putting 12 to 18. So make sure that this is clear for us because it helps determine the funding source. And again, you need 10 hours here. Now here's where your start date of employment is important. You want to make sure that is accurate because it helps determine the eligibility for the months that you worked. So let's say your start date was, we're just going to randomly pick a date. We're going to say August 5th, 2018. And then you're going to put today's date. So today's date is the 12th. Or excuse me, it is December 16th, 2022. And then were you employed here during the summer months? Yes or no? And then if you had prior experience, you're going to put it here. As long as your current employment is an eligible DWS site, that will count. And this previous employment will count as long as you met the requirements of that you worked 10 hours a week with children ages between 5 and 18 in an after-school program. So let's say that you completed that you completed the information so far and you have some previous employment. So you go ahead and you put your organization in, your title, your supervisor's name, and again, that is super important. You come over here, you verify that you worked with children. Let's say you worked with children 5 through 12. And you work 10 hours a week. You're going to do your employment date down here. Your employment date, let's say, was 8/10/2017. And then the end date, we're going to just randomly say it was the 4th of 2018. Looks like we have a little itty bitty error here, so you want to check for those. Then if you scroll down here, your time in the after school field will be automatically calculated and your level will be here. Your level again determines your training hours, which is here for you, and your professional activity units that is required. You're also going to then go to the training hours tab and you're going to complete 20 hours in section 1, and then 10 hours in section 2. You do have the option to complete your 30 hours all in section 1 if you would prefer, but you need a minimum of 20 hours here. And then your 20 hours are going to come from some of these title trainings, and you're going to complete the hours, the date, the training name, topics covered. One of the biggest reasons we send applications back to an applicant to add more information is this tab right here, or excuse me, this cell right here. This question: how do you implement the training materials or the information you received? If you go back up here to row 6, we have an example for you. The example states that you have 10.5 hours were completed. The date, you have the training name, the trainer name, organizations, the topic covered. And then here is where you write in how you implemented the program. If this is really short or incomplete or doesn't answer the question, we're going to send it back to you for more information. So this example is a good one. It says, I implemented behavior management strategies in my K through 3rd. It answers the what and the how. And in my classroom, my K through 3 classroom, I discussed suicide prevention resources with my colleagues in a staff meeting. That tells us what you did. And then how did you document it? It could be a certificate of attendance. It could also be a training schedule. It could be a curriculum. It could be a conference booklet, proof of a registration, or a supervisor's signature will be accepted. Once you've completed the 20, at least the 20 hours here, and again, it can be 30. It's up to you. You have a section 2 training down here. And again, section 2 has a little bit more wiggle room. This could be a training that occurred at your center, but it needs to make sure it's a training. Don't make it an agenda where you just met with your group and you discussed what was happening that week. This needs to be a training that is related to the after school work that we do. And again, you do the same thing. Make sure that you are answering these questions completely. If you are not, we will again send it back to you. And then once that's completed, it will tally down here and tell you again, it's a minimum of 30 hours. Your professional activities tab is next. This also must be completed in complete sentences, and you will be able to see what your level requires by scrolling down, and it will tell you based on your work experience how many activity units you need. They are weighted based on the amount of time and energy and how complex the task might be. So for example, if you were held a chair position on an after-school related national committee, it's weighted 15 because that's a bigger one. If you're attending an after-school conference, that's 10 units. And if you are volunteering, that's 4 units at a conference. And you have a bunch of different categories that you can choose from based on what your work is. So if you're getting an observation from a supervisor, that counts. If you're a supervisor and you're giving observations, that counts. So there's a bunch to choose from, and there's enough here that based on your work, you should be able to complete the amount of professional activities within the allotted time. The applicant summary is the next page. You want to make sure this is completely filled out or it will be sent back to you. Application summary, these hours will be automatically tallied by formulas. Make sure you electronically sign it and you date it. And again, you're going to save this file, first name, last name, FY23, VF, and email it to professionallearning@utahafterschool.org by April 14th, 2023. I would invite you next to stay on and continue to listen to the Q&A because more questions will be answered for you there. And feel free always to email professionallearning@utahafterschool.org for additional information. Thank you. my screen, and we're gonna go through an overview to get started with, and we will also be monitoring the chat. So if you have questions that come up that we don't answer, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we will get to them at the end. Can everybody give me a thumbs up if they can see my screen? We're good? We're good. Awesome. Okay, wonderful. So just again, we're here to talk about the after school professional incentive. I'd like to direct you all to the website. If you haven't gone there and downloaded the forms, we're going to be doing that in just a little bit. But you'll want to make sure that you have the verification form downloaded and the application downloaded. Both of those forms will be required for you to apply for the incentive. So what is the after school incentive? So the after school incentive is a financial award that's given to after school professionals to promote their professional development and to highlight their skills, increase skills, and be able to be rewarded for the time that you spend as an after school professional to improve your skills. The Utah After School workforce, you directly work with increasing the quality and the scope and the accessibility of your after school programs. And so we're here to help you be somewhat rewarded for your efforts. So you might be asking who can apply? Who's eligible? There are some requirements that you will need to know about and make sure that you qualify for these programs. So who is eligible? Well, you must work for a program that is eligible for DWS funds. And so basically what that means is that you are either a licensed center or you're a license exempt center that receives DWS funds in other forms. And if you're not sure if your program is or not, if you go to the website, our website, and Rosalba's also going to put that link in the chat for you, there is a link for the childcare website, and you'll just go on the childcare website and you'll say find program, and you'll look for your program to make sure that it is in a current licensing status. And again, if you're not sure, you can ask a director or your program center as well, but because they should definitely know if they're a licensed child care center. But then all applicants must be 18 years of age and work at least 10 hours a week in an after-school program. You must also satisfy all the requirements in the level. We're going to talk more about the corresponding levels and your work experience, but you have to meet everything in there. If you're missing some things, once it's all done, once your application is in, your verification is form, we'll work with you on those things to make sure that you're meeting all requirements, but they should all be done when you submit. But sometimes there's a little tweaking and we can help you with that. We want you to get the incentive, so we're here to help you and support you to get the incentive. Again, you must complete your work experience tab of the incentive verification form to determine your level. That's the first step, and we're going to walk through this. And then the levels are determined by your experience. So a school year is going to be 8 months minimum, and then it rolls depending on your work experience, and we'll show you that as well. But that determines your level, and that also determines your award amount based on your level. Again, it's really important that all your requirements are met in the training hours as well as your professional activities. The verification form has two areas that you're working on, which is the amount of training hours you put in the 8 months prior to your application, and then your professional activities. Each year you apply for this, you'll need to complete new training hours and new professional activity and gain units in that time period, so the 8 months prior to your application. And then again, the licensed center and DWS professional, in your center must be a licensed center. Okay, let's take a brief overview of the levels. So each level is determined by the number of years you've worked in an after-school program. And then each level has 30 hours, and that doesn't change per level. What does change is your professional activity units, and we'll go over those. And then the award amount is based on the level that you're participating in, the level that you qualify for based on the number of years that you've participated in after-school programs. This is a nice financial award for you, and there is some work that goes into it for you because you are doing training hours as well as these professional activities. Okay, so what's the incentive format? What does it look like, and how do you go about doing an application, and how do you fill out your verification form? These are questions we get all the time, so we're here to help you with that. So your application form is on paper, and you download that from the website, and it's a paper form. You're going to fill out the paper form, and then you're going to email it to professionallearning@utahafterschool.org. Along with the paper application, you must complete the verification form. The verification form is an Excel file, and that must be completely filled out with your work experience, your training hours, and your professional activities. So we've already talked about the eligibility requirements, but we're putting them in here a couple times to make sure that you understand who and how and why all of those questions are answered for you around eligibility. One of the biggest questions that we get is, can a director get this incentive? Sure, directors can. And again, you must be working at least 10 hours per week, working directly with the youth ages 5 to 18, or you're in an after-school program and you're a direct supervisor of those who are working with youth, or you have worked with those, or you have supervised those who work with youth ages 5 through 18 in an after-school program. I want to pause really quick here for a moment. Is there any questions so far? I mean, we're going to go over this more, but.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat from Michael. Why does 21st Century grants only or not qualify for the incentive?
So that's a good question. So my understanding is, as any program that is licensed, exempt, or a licensed center can still apply for this. So if you're in a 21st Century program that has not chosen to get licensed, that's the only reason why you would not be eligible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you for the clarification.
Good. Okay. Do we have any other questions at this time? Okay.
I don't see any others, Anna.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about your training hours. So again, if you remember, we said each level has 30 hours of training that need to be completed within the 8 months of your application that was submitted. And you do these 30 hours every year. So what's great about this is there are so many opportunities that will qualify for these training hours. But here's the things that you need to know. So each training hours must be completed within the 12-month period from the date of the application and cannot be replicated from past applications. Your documentation doesn't need to be submitted with the application. However, it must be available if you're chosen for a random audit. About 20% of applicants go through an audit, which means you must have all of your certifications available. You must have agendas from any staff meeting that had a training in it that might qualify. You might need a letter if you didn't from your supervisor if certificates were not provided. And we'll go through a little bit more of what's accepted around documentation. Again, it could be possibly a conference booklet. It could be proof of registration. We work with you. Again, we want you to get this application. We want you to get the incentive. So we work with you depending on what you have, but we do need some documentation for the audits, as well as sometimes we need clarification and we might reach out to a supervisor or yourself for clarification on things that are in your training hours. So a total of 30 hours is needed, and a minimum of 20 hours is in section 1. And again, this is where it's important that you're going to the website and you download that incentive application so you can see all of the section 1 trainings that you can choose from. Now you have some autonomy here because the remaining 10 hours of the training can be completed in section 1 or section 2. And other trainings are subjective to review in section 2. So that means that you have about 10 hours of training that can be from a training that you had at work that's not on our list in section 1. It could be something that you had outside of work but is in the after school field and would qualify, and we work with you to make sure that it fits within that window of a training that would be applicable to your work in the after school field. Here's the biggest thing that we communicate to applicants once we've gotten their form is sometimes the questions are a little bit incomplete. So here's the biggest tip for processing your application quickly. Make sure you're writing complete sentences in the questions that are asked. Make sure that you're using detail. It's a minimum of 2 to 3 sentences. We'll take more because we ask you questions about your training. We want to know how you took your training and how it was implemented into your after school program and how you documented this training. So make sure that you're spending the time to go through those questions and answer them. So we, as an outsider, can look at it and totally go, oh, we know what happened here. This is a great example of a training that would qualify. And again, we want you to make sure that you understand that this one, sorry, there was a duplicate there. And we're going to go on now to professional activities. But before I do that, do we have any questions about your training hours? Good. Okay. The next section that you need to complete some time in is the professional activities. And the professional activities are similar to the training hours. They need to be completed within the last 12-month period from the date of your application, and you can't repeat these year to year. They need to be new and something that you've worked on in the current time period. The professional activity units are set by each level, meaning if you are level 1, you are going to need 10 units. If you are level 8, you're going to need 80 units. So you're going to need to make sure that you determine your level to understand how many units is required. The great thing about the units is they're kind of weighted depending on the amount of time that you put in. So some are worth 2, some are worth 6 units, some are worth 10 units. So that's one of the really great things about the way the professional activity units are set, is they're really geared to make sure that your time is valued and that the time that you're putting in is equal to the amount of units, as well as there's also smaller measures there so that you can complete. And a lot of these things you're already doing. You just need to put some thought into it. You need to answer the questions about how it was implemented and how it was received in your program. And again, make sure that you're answering these questions in detail. Paint the picture for us, paint the story so we can look at it and know what happened in your experience for your professional activities. There is, like I had mentioned, the professional activities are applicable to many different experiences that you might have. So there's a ton there for you to choose from. And a lot of them, like I said, you're already doing these things, which will really help you. We want you to make sure that you're looking at the right level. So you might be asking, well, how do I do that? Well, you're going to be in the after school verification form. You're going to fill out that first page, which will be your work experience. And then when you drop down to column C and you look on row 141 in that verification form, and hopefully you've all gone to the website and downloaded that and opened it up. So you can see what I'm talking about. It will tell you the level that you're on. Do we have you guys had a chance to download it? Do you have questions on that form? I'm happy to share my screen and bring it up if you would like a little more detail. Are we good? Yeah. Okay. So once you have completed your verification form, you might be saying, what do I do now? Well, make sure again that all tabs are completed and that you've matched your levels. Your level is equal to the amount of professional activity units that you need, and it will tell you there if you're complete or not. The formulas will say, yep, you're complete, or nope, you're not complete. So that's a great feature. We'd like you to save your file, first name, last name, and then VF FY23, and you're going to download it and you're going to email it to professional learning at utahafterschool.org. The deadline to do that is April 14th, 2023 for this fiscal year, school year. That date is non-negotiable. It needs to be that date. If you apply after that date, you will have to wait until the next year to the next school year to have it count. And we are on deadlines for that because we get this funding from DWS. And so it is the same funding source for the Career Ladder Incentive. So if you are working at a child care center and you're going for the Career Ladder Incentive, you cannot go for the after school incentive because it's the same pool of money. Let's go on to the application. So the application again is a paper form. You're going to download it. You're going to hand fill it out.
Anna?
Yes.
Sorry, Michael has a question.
Sure, Michael.
So April 14th is the deadline. If,
Yes.
say, a an employee finished in like February and submitted it, do they have to wait till April 14th for it to be processed, or would it be processed in March and they would get their money early?
Michael, that's such a great question. I love it. So an applicant can submit anytime after the application is open, and we will start processing their application at that point. So that's we're going to jump into that a little bit more when we get a little closer to the end. I want to refer everybody to how the formulas are determined, because that kind of helps you determine when you want to, you know, put in your application. But the nice thing about it is we are, like, right now we have 2 applications in that have been submitted, and we will get it processed and send it off to URPD for request for payment, and they do their end, and then a check will be cut. So it's really nice to think ahead of, you know, when you want to complete this within the school year. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that kind of determines a few things, but that's a really great question. Okay, the after school incentive application. Again, this is a paper form, and you're going to download it and you're going to fill it out, and then you are going to sign it, and you're going to then need a supervisor's signature on it before you email it to us. Now, in the past, we've accepted these by mail. We will still accept it by mail, but you're encouraged to email it to us, because we get it faster that way, and as long as the signatures are there, we're good to go. And so and it's best if you can email this with your verification form at the same time.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry. You just have mentioned multiple times that this needs to be handwritten. So if we were to not handwrite it, but just like type it out and everything, is that not acceptable?
Oh, no. Yes, that's fine. You can, like, if you have, it's just a PDF form. So
Yeah.
you'll need like an Adobe access to be able to edit a PDF form.
Okay.
Most people just handwrite it. So, but
Okay.
either is acceptable. But we do need a signature, your like handwritten signature, your supervisor's handwritten signature. A digital signature is fine for the verification form, but we need the actual signature on this form. So,
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
you're welcome. Great question. Great question. There are 2 sides to this application. It's pretty brief, but we also need this complete. So one of the bugaboos that we see, if you can see here on my screen, you have a place under program information for organization name and program name. So if this is not complete, and we sometimes have to come back to you and say, after school program doesn't tell us your organization or your program name. And we use these 2 things to verify that your program is eligible for funding. So we're going to take your program name, we're going to take your organization name, we're going to go to the child care website that I referred you to in the beginning and pull it up, and it's going to tell us if you're licensed or you're license exempt. And if we don't have a complete name here, then we're going to have some communication with you in trying to figure that out. So make sure that you're looking clearly at this form and giving us the information that is asked, because it will help expedite your application tenfold if this information is correct. And again, this is the same deadline as the verification form. We want it April 14th, 2023 by 5 p.m. And this is accessible to you on the website.
I have a question.
Okay.
This is Becky Smith.
Yes, please.
The first, few years working for the after school program, I was under Allies with Families, but last year and this year we are now under the Boys and Girls Club. So would Allies with Family qualify as long as the grant money came from the same place? Can I go back that many years to them, or am I just going to be able to have to claim the 2 years with Boys and Girls Club?
That is a great question. That is a great question. So your your current program that you're in, the way I understand it, needs to be DWS eligible for funding. Your work experience needs to be with after school programs, children 5 to 8. So we're going to be looking at your for eligibility for program, we're going to be looking at your current site. Your work experience needs to just make sure that it was in an after school program and that it is with children 5 to 8, or you are directly supervising those who do work directly with youth in an after school program. So your other work experience is going to count as long as it was in an after school program. Does that make sense?
Yes, that answered my question. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, so this next piece right here, I'm going to switch my screen and I'm hoping you guys can all see it. Please let me know that you can. Can you guys see this? After school FAQs. Okay, so this is on our website, and I highly recommend that you take a look at this, because this details out absolutely everything that we just talked about. It's going to talk about our program eligibility. It's going to give you the links so that you need to go to again to see if you were a licensed exempt site or a licensed center. And then we're going to talk a little bit about individual eligibility. So again, this is everything that we have talked about today. And also it talks about your training requirements. It goes in a little deeper about the courses, or like one of the common questions that we have is, does your college courses count? And so we answer that here, and any more in-depth questions that you might have that we have not covered will most likely be on this frequent asked question page. So I'd like to take this moment to just see what other questions that we might have. All right.
I have one question about possible training opportunities, I suppose. So with the state's new mandate for letters training for early childhood reading, does those letters trainings count towards this incentive? Are you familiar with the letters training that the state's mandating for schools?
A little bit, but I'd love to learn more about them. So most likely I'm going to say yes, they would qualify under the other 10 hours. So anything that's going to enhance a after school's professional skill level, and most likely like the state courses, they're on that track. And so we have had other state courses be in that other 10 hours of training, and it would fit.
Okay. Thank you.
Michael, can I ask a deeper question? How many of your staff are taking that course?
I don't know specifically. I know because we have a variety of staff. We have some of our classroom teachers all the way to high school kids, right? But I know all staff who teach K through third grade are required to do it. So that's training that they have to do anyway. And so I know I'll get a question when somebody hears about it, if they can use their letters training to count towards PD training. So because in our school districts, that's what most of those lower reading teachers are focusing on.
Gotcha. And I know I said it before, but we want applicants to get the incentives, so we definitely work with you on those extra 10 hours, to make the connection to increasing professional development skills for applicants. And that one sounds like it's right spot on. So.
So I have another question. So with like America Reads tutors who they work in our programs, but their funding technically comes from like the college supplies their funding, but they work our programs. Are they ineligible even though they're like they're part of the staff and they do the same background checks and they're on the whole Office of Child Care website lists and everything like that? Would they be ineligible because their personal funding doesn't come out of the DWS pot, although they're working the programs? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It does. So I would go back to, is their program, the program that they're working under, is it a licensed center or a licensed exempt center?
Yeah, the programs are licensed. The staff are kind of just, so Utah State's America Reads program provides those tutors for the after school programs to use, and they fund them, but they work in the program. They go through the same licensing that like our hired staff would go through.
Mm-hmm.
So everything's the same except for we don't technically cut their check.
Mm-hmm.
So are they ineligible for that?
Are they working 10 hours a week?
Yeah, most of them.
So those would be the two, those are the two big ones. So if they are working in a center that's licensed or license exempt and they have to be working a minimum of 10 hours, then my understanding is they would be eligible.
Okay.
Because
yeah.
they're still working under that umbrella.
Correct. And they go through the same licensing procedures. Like they have all the same background checks through Office of Child Care. We just don't personally cut their check. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Great question.
I have a question,
Okay.
maybe just for some clarification.
Sure.
So when you say that the trainings can't be replicated, that doesn't mean that if one of my staff went to Jumpstart this year and last year, they can still count both of those, correct? But so what my understanding is, but if they do like QPR training in the beginning of April from last year, they couldn't count that towards their incentive for this year. Is that what that means?
So it goes by the 12 months prior to the application date. So for example, if an applicant turns in their application April 14th, 2023, they go back 12 months and they can use any training and professional activities that happened in that 12-month period. So it just depends on when they apply. If they applied in January, then they can only go January to January, which is why like I said before, there's a little bit of play in when an applicant chooses to apply. I recommend applicants choose the same time every year because it works better in their favor to remember how to count their hours in that last period, but also how the formulas work for their work experience, because the work experience has a formula based on the date of the application, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. So the important thing is to keep track of the dates of the trainings and not necessarily like one training that you did previously doesn't count for the next year, only if it falls in that 12-month window.
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah, so you could have training that overlaps a school year because you're doing a 12-month period, but you can't duplicate it. So you recharge only happens like once a year. So, depending on the application date, that's where the duplication might come into play. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, totally. I have one more thing too. It's not really a question,
Sure.
but my staff last year had a little trouble filling out the application. Let's see, let me look at it. in the training, blah, 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 the training material, how did you implement the training material or information you received into your program? They had trouble with that. So I don't really have a question with that, but like, if there could be more examples of how to write that, that might be helpful sometimes. So yeah.
Yes, so that 2 to 3, the questions there, the 2 to 3.
Yeah, that was the main thing that tripped them up last year, and I helped them correct it. It got sent back to them asking for more, but some more examples might be cool or helpful or good.
Okay, that's a great thought. That's a great thought, and that is a very common example. You know, if an applicant only puts in one sentence, we're going to send it back to them and say, we don't really have a full detail of your experience. We need you to expand upon it. 2 to 3 sentences is the minimum. Would love to see more, but we can definitely, like, I can add in another example of what the 2 to 3 sentences might look like to describe it in detail for what we're looking for. Do we have any other questions?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Just who do we reach out to when we have questions while we're filling it out?
Very good question. So it's through the verification form, our email. And if you have questions, it's just professionallearning@utahafterschool.org. Rosalba or myself will be handling and vetting any questions that come in, and we're happy to help you. And we will respond within a day, or let you know if it's going to be a little bit longer, if it's like a holiday or something.
Awesome. Thank you.
And Rosalba just dropped that email in the chat. Those of you that, I have a question for those of you that are like on a supervisor level. What are the common things that you help your staff with this form? Do you have any thoughts, like that was just presented, that might make it better for them?
I think that this is helpful, this Q&A session, and that it's being recorded. I'm going to share it with my staff and have them watch it while before they fill it out.
Wonderful.
I have a tip. I'm no longer a supervisor in a program, but when I was, something that was helpful was because the form is available so early, you can just download it and start filling it out as you go throughout the year. Instead of having to do it, if it can be very time consuming if you're trying to do it all in one sitting. So I'd say either do it on the form itself throughout the year as you have trainings come up, and then I feel like the answers to those questions of what you learned or how you're implementing it come a little easier when it wasn't a year ago. If you don't want to do that, then I think just keeping really good track of your trainings throughout the year, and you know what the questions we're going to be asking are, it's just really helpful in inputting the information on time.
Great tip.
And I would also add to that is, as supervisors, fill it out yourself. Know that if there's going to be some questions that they're going to stumble, how would you answer that question? How would you kind of process the applications, and just kind of go through those steps? Because I think that would be helpful also for you as the supervisor to help your staff and just kind of going through that process. And if you have any questions, of course, we're always here and available to go through that. But towards the end, and I'll just add this in, towards the end of the application deadline, that's usually when everybody likes to submit their applications. So we may be a little bit backed up, but if you guys can start now with your staff and downloading the application and kind of answering any questions and contacting us, I think that will run a little bit smoother as well. Hopefully that helps.
Great thoughts. Thank you, Rosalba and Lauren. I would also recommend, if you're a supervisor, to encourage your staff to create a folder on your drive for all of their certificates. So they're responsible for their certificates, and if they're audited, they're prepared to be able to get all that documentation to us based on the level that they qualify for. The documentation can be a little bit, or it can be a lot. So, and also we encourage you as supervisors to apply for this incentive, because you guys qualify as well, because you directly supervise those that are working in programs. So get the financial award and treat yourself. All right, one last shout out if we have any further questions.
Hey, Anna, I'm just going to ask this because it's come up for me. If the training is not on the list that we've provided, can they use other training to be qualified, or can other trainings be qualified for the incentive?
So we have a window of those 10 hours that really are an applicant's choice to determine what you want to do with that 10. The 20 hours have that list. So there's a minimum of 20 hours that have to happen in section 1. And anything outside of that list needs to go in the 10 hours below. All right. Well, if that is it, we appreciate your time. Feel free to reach out if you have further questions after we close. We'd love to work with you. And again, we're here to help you get the incentive, help your staff get the incentive, and also help you incentivize staff to continue in the after school professional field, because that's what the incentive is all about, is giving them an extra little bonus for being an after school professional. So we want to thank you for being here, and you all stay warm and safe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That's it.